taking off from Lord Flat in Oregon, high density altitude, heavily loaded airplane. We're struggling to get in the air. We're using 20 degrees of flaps. Then we start getting some speed and reduce to 10 degrees. In this video, I'll show you about flaps for takeoff. Here is a Cessna 172 taking off with no flaps. Windy, gusty day, so you can have more control with no flaps. Now another 172 taking off with 10 degrees of flaps. 172 you get 10 degrees to get more lift. Piper lands. This is a coastal airport, so high density altitude is not a factor. Still, this kind of airplane needs lots of runway to get in the air. It's using 10 degrees of flaps. In this case it was lightly loaded, so I think this kind of airplane you have to be careful with weight and short runways. Cessna 206, long runway, 10 degrees of flaps, light winds, gets in the air pretty quick. Cessna 182, this is in Bull Run, Oregon, high density altitude is not a factor. I'm using 30 degrees of flaps, and the only reason I'm doing 30 degrees is because Sportsman stall gets the best performance on the Cessna wing with 30 degrees of flaps, so I can get in the air quick. Cessna 170, I start the roll with 20 degrees of flaps, and as soon as I can lift the tail wheel, I add 10 more for 30. Again, Sportsman stall gets the best performance with 30 degrees of flaps. CJ6 Danshan, no flaps for takeoff, because the split flaps in this airplane are only to produce drag, so takeoff with flaps will not help. The flaps on the CJ6 are pneumatic, they come down or up pretty quick. Cessna flaps and most current general aviation airplanes has electric flaps. They're slow to come down and slow to come up. All their Cessnas, Pipers have manual flaps, which you can control the speed that they can come up or down. So these are the flaps that the pilot can control the most. Disadvantage is that they're hard to reach and they're lower in some airplanes. The advantages are that you can feel and control the flap lever with your hand and how much lift does it give you. So on the 170 and the 182, which have the Sportsman stall kit, in the 170 I start with 20 degrees of flaps and then raise the tail and add 10 more to 30, then start flies pretty slow. In the 182 I tried this, but the electric flaps are a little slower, so it doesn't make much of a difference. I had my hand on the flap lever and was pressing without noticing, and this happened. It got disconnected. So something to be careful with manual flaps. Some flaps create lift, some others only create drag. This is a different kind of flaps. It is good to know them well. I have experimented a lot in the Cessna 182. Many times I tried taking off with 20 degrees of flaps and adding 10 more for 30, but my airplane has very quick acceleration because of the empty propeller. So the electric flaps are so slow that it did not make a difference. Here I'm taking off from Chukar Flats in Oregon. You can see the flaps are down to 30 degrees. Heavily loaded airplane, short strip, and as soon as I get in the air I get on ground effect to get some speed. Then once I get speed I start reducing flaps and start my climb. I have done a lot of testing with the electric flaps in the Cessna 182. On takeoff, what you want is low drag and high lift. That is with any airplane, not just the Cessnas. And when I experimented at high density altitude airstrips, I found out that 20 degrees of flaps work better than 30 degrees of flaps. Seems to be that 30 degrees of flaps at high density altitude was dragging too much and the airplane was not liking it. I also tried 10 degrees of flaps, but they were worse than 30 degrees of flaps. Also tried starting with 10 degrees of flaps and then adding 10 more, but since the Cessna flaps are electric and kind of slow, doesn't make much of a difference. And to me it's not worth the distraction. So from now on, when at high density altitude airstrips, 20 degrees of flaps will be my standard for the best takeoff. Once I get in the air, get some speed, I reduce to 10 and I continue my climb. I'm glad I did all these tests, so now I can know the best performance at high altitude airstrips. Try to get in the air as soon as possible and then stay in ground effect to get some free performance and get some more speed. Different airplanes have different settings for flaps. For example, this is a coastal airport, 30 degrees is the best, but Cessna 170 might be 20 degrees to add 30, Cessna 172 might be 10 degrees, maybe 20 degrees is too much drag, so it's better to check the POH and also experiment if you have a different stall kit or different wing. During my flying I have tried pneumatic flaps, electric flaps and manual flaps. Of all of these, my favorite ones are the manual flaps because you as the pilot have full control and feel from what they are doing. Electric flaps are also good, but just a bit too slow for backcountry operations and get the full performance out of them. The pneumatic flaps on the CJ6, they only add drag, so are only good for landing, and they are also too quick, so you have absolutely no control, and when you deploy them you get a quick pitch up attitude. So flaps definitely help, they add lift, and they are especially needed in backcountry operations. They can make the difference between clearing an obstacle or not. Here we're taking off from a jungle strip and doing a VX climb because we have tall trees at the end of the airstrip and we want to clear them as quickly as possible. Since this is low elevation, we use 30 degrees of flaps. So it is good to experiment, know your airplane, read the POH, experiment at low altitude, big runways, then get more proficient. But definitely flaps are good for takeoffs and every airplane is different. Please join me on Patreon if you want to support Backcountry 182. Thanks for watching. It is very easy to join, to be a patron of Backcountry 182. Go to the YouTube channel. On the right hand side there is the link and then it takes you to the Patreon page. Here you can see all the tiers and what is all about the support for Backcountry 182 YouTube channel. Also, another way to access the Patreon link is in the description of the video I put in YouTube on Backcountry 182 channel. There is a link for Patreon, so just click on that and it will take you to the page. Thank you for watching. It will be amazing if you guys are interested and give some support.
Hi, I'm Dana, Larry's wife, and today we're excited to announce the launching of Patreon for our YouTube channel Backcountry 182, which give fans and friends the opportunity to support creators like Larry and myself by paying a monthly amount and receiving exclusive content. So with your support through Patreon, we will be able to make more and better content more often and new videos. And Larry can connect with you more personally to hear your questions and concerns and what would you like to see. The really cool thing of being a patron is that every dollar amount does help. So go ahead and check out the tiers. You can be a fan and look through our goals to see what we will be able to achieve together at every level of support. Come join us and be part of our adventure.